Hello readers, perusers, and bibliophiles of all kinds. I'm Cheddar Allen Poe.
And I'm Stone Cold Jane Austen.
And welcome to September issue of PowerLines,
where we cover the goings-on at the Palm Harbor Library, as well as this month's last call, Tallgrass.
And check out all of our contests, including PowerLines and SpeedScroll.
You, shaved your head?
Yeah, I think I said too many times that mole ain't just a fish, it's a way of life. And it's gone now. New shirts. Print on demand, please contact us for details.
I told you, it's Sumerian math.
Now, just as a heads up, this month's last call will feature adult themes.
Consider this our content warning.
Don't worry, we put it towards the end of the segment so you can still enjoy everything else before deciding whether to continue on or not. And now for Nuggets of Kidsdom. How was the carnival?
Yay! Just survived the summer reading carnival. Just survived the summer reading carnival. It was so much fun. There were carnival games. There was cotton candy, popcorn.
And are we doing this again next year?
Yeah!
Doing this again next year?
Yeah!
There we go. Hi everybody, it's Miss Jacqueline, and I was just going to let you guys know what's happening in the kids' room coming up. We're going to be doing a couple of fun things in September. One of them, we're actually going to be having an Encanto program later in the month. We also have Perler Partners, which is for ages 5 to 12. It's going to be on September 13th. And we have so much fun doing all of the perler bead creations, which some of you may have missed from Makerspace, but that's why we're bringing back Perler Partners Club. So registration is required for that one, so make sure you do register for that. All of our story times are back in session. Mother Goose on Wednesdays, Baby Bookworms for 0 to 12 months on Thursdays, and then Fridays for toddler story time. So anytime you guys want to come down to the library for those, we would love to have you. And those are not registration required. We will also be starting in September, infant toddler sign language will be starting back up. So if you're interested in that, definitely let us know. We do have Toddler STEM coming up on September 20th, which is a Tuesday at 11 a.m. That's designed for 0 to 5 with caregiver. We usually do a couple of different stations that involve some kind of STEM activity, which we are excited to do some fall fun themed.
Bob the Fast-Talking Dolphin again. So apparently some slime-sucking remora reported my last business deal, and apparently souls aren't legal tender, even though they're taxable. So here I am today with Bob's Fast Car Deals for you. So first off, we've got this jalopy. You know, she's got a full tank of gas, but I gotta give full disclosure. Corners like a battleship, and she gets terrible mileage, but she's still got a full tank of gas, courtesy of the previous owner. And next off, we got this beauty here. Get this, burns lead and fuel only. It gets rid of lead, that's what you want, isn't it? Oh, wait, that's my lawyer, I gotta go. Hold on. What do you mean, fifth indictment?
This segment was brought to you by Cheddar's Cheesy Minis. Painting miniatures is a passion since 2019. Commissions are currently open. DM our Instagram at ChedCheeseMinis for details. Hey, I'm here for the reading. It's Tormented King by Victor Vierbickas III.
From author Victor V. Vierbickas III, a high fantasy adventure quest series, The Epics of Disradel. Immerse yourself in a tormented king and follow Dijon, King of Disradel. You'll meet him halfway through his personal journey, burdened with knowing his own destiny and driven by a desire to be a successful king. He must face his fears and choose his kingdom's longevity or his life. You may foresee the ending of some tales, but destiny still leaves room for surprise. Get your copy, paperback, hardcover, or Amazon Kindle.
Halfway to the top, he stood on his axe handle, stabbed into the wall. He rested, trying to catch his breath. They drug out, and each breath in felt less than the last. His head pulsated with each heartbeat. He felt dizzy, falling against the wall, smacking his head. A pain rose in his gut just before he threw up, losing his balance. He pulled a knife from his side, cutting the straps into his chest plate, loosening it. Hardly able to breathe, he yelled for help, but slipped. Hurtling towards the bottom, his fingers slid down the rough wall as he took his knife and stabbed it in. It dragged under his weight, ripping through the dense dirt, only getting caught by a rock which shook his grip.
Halfway to the top, he stood on his axle handle, stabbed into the wall. He rested, trying to catch his breath. They drug out, and each breath felt like less than the last. His head pulsated with each heartbeat. He felt dizzy, falling against a wall, smacking his head. A pain rose in his gut just before he threw up, losing his balance. He pulled a knife from his side, cutting the straps on the chest plate, loosening it. Hardly able to breathe, he yelled for help but slipped, hurtling towards the bottom. His fingers slid down through the rough wall as he took his knife and stabbed it in. His dagger under his weight, ripping through the dense dirt, only getting caught by a rock which shook his grip.
Halfway to the top, he stood on his axe handle, stabbed into the wall. He rested, trying to catch his breath. They drug out, and each breath in felt like less than the last. His head pulsated with each heartbeat. He felt dizzy. Falling against the wall, smacking his head, a pain rose in his gut just before he threw up, losing his balance. He pulled a knife from his side, cutting the straps on his chest plate, loosening it. Hardly able to breathe, he yelled for help but slipped. Hurtling towards the bottom, his fingers slid through the rough wall as he took his knife and stabbed it in. It dragged under his weight, ripping through the dense dirt, only getting caught by a rock which shook his grip.
Halfway to the top, he stood on his axe handle, stabbed into the wall. He rested, trying to catch his breath. They drug out, and each breath in felt like less than the last. His head pulsated with each heartbeat. He felt dizzy, falling against the wall, smacking his head. A pain rose in his gut just before he threw up, losing his balance. He pulled a knife from his side, cutting the straps on his chest plate, loosening it. Hardly able to breathe, he yelled for help but slipped. Hurtling towards the bottom, his fingers slid down the rough wall as he took his knife and stabbed it in. It dragged under his weight, ripping through the dense dirt, only getting caught by a rock, which shook his grip.
How are you that fast?
I don't know. Did we start yet?
Yeah, it was on when I came in.
Oh. Well, good job.
Were you just running laps around here?
We don't need to talk about it.
I think we do.
Now today, PowerLines.
And don't bring up the thing again.
Oh, we got someone in to talk about it.
I keep getting calls on my phone. I'm really worried about it. I don't know who these people are.
Don't worry. So, for today, Hey, what the? Oh.
Shut that off. You boys have something to say?
We have to tell you something. There never was a Dead Sea Scroll. And even if there was,
Which there isn't.
we recant anything it may have given us.
Which it didn't.
And we hereby will not mention said scroll or try to claim anything it may have conferred on us.
Which it didn't.
At any point in time. Okay. Can we at least get some,
Can you let us into the coffee room?
they locked us in here. You seem to have an everything key.
Watch yourself up.
Ow. He kicked you on the ground.
Yeah, I think I destroyed my spleen.
Oh, God.
Whether you're working or just reading for fun, please make sure to take a break every once in a while and come on by our cafe.
This is everything I hoped it would be.
We've got a selection of coffees and teas, both caffeinated and not, to ensure everyone has a nice, refreshing experience. As well, the cafe doubles as a bookstore, and who knows, maybe you'll find that one book that's looking for a forever home.
What are you two doing here?
Oh, now that's all over with, on to PowerLines. Thieves Race by Isaac Padgett. This month we're focusing on sorrow as our theme.
Bet you're feeling pretty sorrowful right now.
Just roll the... From young author Isaac Padgett comes a gripping story of Jack, a young thief whose only goal is to prove his love. Forces at work beyond his sight have other plans though, and he is thrust into a race against demons to get his hand on a weapon that can, no, will, change history forever. Who can he trust when those closest to him have a knack for betrayal? Jack must push through and beat his enemies, all while trying to protect those he loves. Get your copy now on Amazon Kindle.
I could have stopped it. You don't know. I could have. It's my fault. All my fault. I'm sorry. It's my fault. It wasn't supposed to happen. She turned and ran, faster than I thought possible, and was gone before I could follow.
I could have stopped it. You don't know. I could have. It's my fault. It's all my fault. I'm sorry. It's my fault. It wasn't supposed to happen. She turned and ran faster than I thought possible, and was gone before I could follow.
I could have stopped it. You don't know. I could have. It's my fault. All my fault. I'm sorry. It's my fault. It wasn't supposed to happen. She turned and ran faster than I thought possible, and was gone before I could follow.
I could have stopped it. You don't know. I could have. It's my fault. All my fault. I'm sorry. It's my fault. It wasn't supposed to happen. She turned and ran faster than I thought possible, and was gone before I could follow.
Yeah, okay, maybe you were right. Maybe I'm feeling a little bit sorrowful. Maybe it's how good they were rubbing off on me.
They call that anguish? Ugh.
This month, we're adding a new segment called Community Theater, where we introduce skill videos from around the community. Today, join Pampered Chef Consultant Gail Gaither as she goes through making a delicious home-cooked meal.
Hi, I'm Gail, and I'm a Pampered Chef Consultant. I'm glad you can join me today. Today I have created a quick, fun recipe that took me 20 minutes with Pampered Chef products and my microwave. And the cool thing is I picked up a couple cookbooks from my local library in their little bookstore. You can also check out cookbooks. You know, cookbooks take up a lot of space. Checking them out gives you a way to go through a bunch of recipes and take the book back when you're done picking out the recipes you want. So stop by your local library and check it out.
That looks like that chicken has an explosion of flavor.
And the greens too, I could just...
This month's service highlight is the fish tank. As most of you know by now, you can check out the fish tank stream at any time on the Palm Harbor Library YouTube channel. Watch a short montage of me maintaining the fish tank. Removing tops and lights. Taking out decorations to be cleaned. Turning off the power. Scrubbing the glass. All sides and corners. Doing the water change. Off screen I clean the filter and the decorations. Place in the back for a new landscape for fish and viewers alike. Put clean water in after adding chemicals.
Restart filter and check flow. Replace glass tops. Replace light and feeder. And buff the glass. Ready to be enjoyed.
For another magic trick, this time from Babylon.
So we moved on. We already had the shirts made. Why are we going to Babylon now?
Well, because it's from a different area.
Okay, yeah, alright.
I mean, they still use Sumerian math, so it'll still work.
Good on them. Good on them.
All right. I have here an unsealed deck of cards, the same deck that I had last time. See, the same seal that I broke last time. Yeah, no trickery here.
We have an unlimited budget.
Bicycle card. Bicycle card. Joker. I don't know what the other Joker is. We'll just roll with it.
It's a Sumerian Joker. It's fine.
All right, pick a card. Any card.
Oh boy. Okay. This one.
Do not show the card to me.
Okay.
All right. Show the card to the camera. Are you satisfied?
I think so.
Okay.
That's a weird question.
All right. Now place the card into your pocket. This one was also in the Himalayan cipher.
That you uncovered, finished.
That I decoded.
Right.
Now. Pick one.
Card or deck?
Deck. All right. Place it right there.
All right. He's laying out the cards again.
Pick one. Place it. Your card is not the two of spades.
You're right.
You see, I should be good enough to go on Magical Evening.
Did you say magical evening? But of course! The third annual Magical Evening event is happening on October 8th, starting at 7 p.m. here at the Palm Harbor Library, where it will be transformed for you to enjoy 4 magicians. These magicians will be around and having their very own shows. So you'll be able to enjoy craft beer from Stilt House, located right in Palm Harbor. Their beverages, also with corporate catering of Palm Harbor, will also be providing non-alcoholic beverages and food. That and the magic is all included in your ticket. Tickets do start at $25 per person and then $45 per couple. That does go up on the day of the show, so make sure you buy them before. This event is 21 plus, so bring friends, bring family, come meet new friends, and make sure you book that babysitter. Because like I said, 21 plus, safely enjoy that Stilt House brew. This is an all-new show and our first in-person show since 2019. It is our third annual. We're so excited to bring it to you. We're having this wonderful event for our Palm Harbor Endowment Foundation to have retrofitting done for LED lights in our library. That will bring more safer lights and also a much more positive environmental impact. So get your tickets today. Go right onto our event Facebook page or onto our homepage of our website. Woof.
What happened?
What do you mean, what? A woman appeared and did way better magic than you did.
Well, your card's not the King of Hearts either.
Yeah, I know it's not the King of Hearts. It was the 2 of clubs. Or spades, sorry.
Alright, that doesn't count. That doesn't count.
So today's weird fact.
No. I'm cutting you off.
I have the power here. In fact, in ancient Rome, surgeons were trained to block out the screams of their soldiers screaming in pain.
This weird fact brought to you by Gaither, Bling. We've got everything. Browse a varied and eclectic selection of outdoor gear at gbladebling.biz. Visit our socials and tell them PowerLines sent you with code PALM, that's PALM, for 10% off anything in stock. Orders of over $100 shipped free. International customer? Contact us to help you. As always, this segment is sponsored by the Palm Harbor Library.
All right, and today for last call, we're discussing Tallgrass by Sandra Dallas. Go ahead around the table. I am Cheddar Allen Bell.
I am Jacqueline from the Kids Room.
And as always, I'm Stone Cold Jane Austen.
All right, so I understand that you had the pleasure of running Ales and Tales this time.
Yes, indeed.
How many people did showed up this time around?
I think including me, there was like 7.
Oh, that's a good group.
That's a good
and remember,
size.
you can be part of it too. Stillhouse Brewery.
Yes.
So what was the reception like?
It seemed like more than the last book that I did for Ales and Tales, it seemed like they enjoyed it more this time, maybe because of the historical context of the book.
Persuasion was historical, wasn't it?
Yeah, but rich people.
Yeah,
Versus
they
middle
weren't
America.
exactly rich in this story, but no, they seemed to enjoy it more as well. There were definitely a couple of, I think, critiques about relationship dynamics.
Okay.
But definitely more praise for it than I was expecting.
What kind of relationship dynamics?
The boy group who was, I'm forgetting all their names, of course.
Well, one of those names we can't say on camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Interesting
There's a
choice.
complicated amount of connotations, and it's not actually bad in the context, but however, just saying it out loud, I have to explain it. That means it's not great.
yeah, and the fact that there is some
We can call him just B-Jack.
Yeah.
B-Jack, yeah.
There was critique on the fact that they were portrayed as that way, or there was critique.
No, critique on like how it rounded out.
Okay.
Like how the sum total of it was by the end.
You mean with with Daisy and Danny?
Yeah, and everybody was surprised that it ended up being
The one that went to war.
Bobby
but
that went to war.
Yes.
Bobby. That it was
Went
him
to
that
war.
actually
He was drafted.
ended up
but-
being the one who murdered the sister and
Yep.
and did a couple of other terrible things and
He just came out of nowhere.
yeah, I think that's how
He
people
came
felt.
back into the story at the end.
Yeah, I think that people felt like that was sort of surprising that that's the route it took, whereas some of the other characters who we thought might have been the culprits.
Right. So basically, we have small town, middle America, farming town. They farm beets for the most part for their sugar.
beets.
Yep. This is around World War II when rationing is kicked in. So the sugar rations and and other meats are reserved for the troops, and that comes up quite a few times. How they're having to use honey and other alternatives.
Molasses. Instead of...
A Japanese internment camp is built near the town. A murder occurs and tensions flare even more so than when the camp was first being built. And all the fun stuff that happens because of that.
So, it's a small town where it's like, you think, oh, not a lot happens. Like, no, a lot happens because...
Talking about my email to the author?
Well, part of why I chose this book was because...
Oh, you did choose it.
Yeah, I chose it. Part of why I chose this one is because I feel like there's not a ton of literature that's been put out about Japanese internment camps in America. And I also I've always loved the context of historical fiction because they can take it to places you can't go in just a study of Japanese internment camps. But, like I said, this topic is not really talked about that much. And it's one that I think is kind of a lost element of American history in terms of what was done to the Japanese Americans.
Americans of Japanese and American citizens.
American citizens, yeah.
That just happened to be of Japanese descent.
And so it was just, when I found out that this book existed, I've heard of some of her other historical fiction books, but when I heard about this one, I was like, this one I thought was a good choice to sort of explore.
Yes, because this is part of her series of books. Check out the other books.
Yeah, she writes mostly historical fiction, which is, again, a topic that or a genre that I like.
I agree with you on that, where it's an interesting thing to take a real historical event, but then put the situation into fictional situations, because then it lets you explore it more. It lets you take possibly multiple accounts of it to make it one full, clear story.
Yeah, in her acknowledgments, she actually mentioned she got the idea for it, finding out that the university she went to actually utilized an old barracks from an internment camp in their classroom teaching. And just the history about it, and being given a tour of it, and being inspired to write about it.
I think, too, there's a lot of history from World War II that can kind of be separated away from American soil, because a lot of it did happen in Europe. And this is something that happened right here in America.
This particular story might be fictional, but the things that happened are very real.
Absolutely.
Like this is stuff that happened, and honestly in some places continues to happen.
And some part of my inspiration too was the fact that within the past year or so, there's been a huge amount of violent attacks on Asian Americans in America currently. And so I thought it was interesting to you could definitely bridge some of what was going on with stereotypes and prejudice against Asians in this context.
The author was kind enough to reach out to us by email. I reached out and she responded. She actually decided to write it when Guantanamo Bay in the early 2000s was a very big topic about keeping people without due process off of American soil, but run by Americans so that they could just indefinitely detain them. And sure, they may not engender sympathy as to who is being detained, but at the same time, it's still a way to detain people while denying them rights, which is pretty much exactly what happened here.
Basically, Americans of Japanese descent were picked up from their homes, their jobs, they were put onto trains of people they don't know, and they were put into various different towns across the United States, and be like, this is where you're living now until we say otherwise, and also we will shoot you if you try to escape.
You switch the language they're speaking, and it starts to sound really bad.
Yeah. I can recite it in German.
I know they mentioned some people in the story too. Any Asian American or Japanese who stayed in their hometowns faced a lot of violence and retaliation against the fact that they were still in the.
In fact, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's fine.
Rennie, the main character, she actually takes a visit to the big town. There, she actually does meet a Japanese family who's running a jewelry store, but sure enough, his window had been smashed in by people who decided to fight the war on their home soil.
They decided to be ignorant.
Yeah.
And the setting for the camp is called, it's the name of the book, Tallgrass. It takes place on an old farmstead that's basically been abandoned, that the government essentially bought out and then just made it into a giant camp, which I guess it's less of a camp as you would think, and it was more of an actual small town.
A small town just with barbed wire fence and guards ready to shoot you.
And no one really had individual rooms. Basically,
you lived in a barracks.
Yep. And you were lucky if you had any kind of wall that would be like a sheet or something. That was it.
And in fact, even some of the Americans kind of grumble when they find out that everyone has communal showers.
Which the continued setting of this is, it is a small American town. It doesn't specify exactly how small. They've got, we know for sure they've got a hardware store, 2 drug stores, and one is better than the other.
A morphine dealer.
And
it's in Colorado.
And it's in Colorado somewhere. Fictional Colorado, to be fair. But Colorado.
Which actually I looked on a map of where the different internment camps were, and there was even one in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were pretty spread out where these internment camps were, which in this they were talking about how they were, a lot of the townspeople were really upset that, their governor allowed it to come. There were a lot of Japanese Americans and Asian of descent, in California and out in the Midwest, but it was pretty far reaching.
In fact, I think it even says that because the Colorado governor said yes, then he didn't win re-election ever again.
Who knew one bad decision could ruin your entire political career?
I'm not flashing it. I'm not doing that kind of research. I'm not blocking the text with the names of every
single one. No, I'm just mad dogging the camera. Just who knew? There's a handful. There's
a handful.
On the family that we follow, specifically the girl Rennie. There's her father, whose name is said a few times, but they mostly just call him Loyal.
I think that's his actual name.
Is that his actual name?
The granny at one point.
Because the brother is also named Loyal. Like he was a loyal, however many generations.
Okay.
So it's an interesting. They all had kind of interesting names. Like, and her sister is
Margulies, yeah.
Yeah, but none of us in the book club could actually. We were like, we all said in our head Martha Lees,
right?
But it could be Martha Alice.
I always said Martha Alice, but I can be a little bit of.
But
I'm gonna go with Martha Lees because it's small town Colorado.
Yeah, so we
Lees,
had fun trying to figuring out how that was said, but yeah, there was
especially after a few brews, right?
Yeah. And then there's the mom, who I think the mom or the wife of Loyal, mom of Rennie, and
granddaughter of the grandmother.
Yes. I think her actual name was Mary.
Yes.
But she's just mostly referred to as mom.
And then we have the brother, Buddy, which is, all these names, Buddy.
And he gets picked up.
He gets sent off to war. He was, I believe he was drafted, right? He didn't sign up?
No, he did sign up.
He did sign up. Okay, sorry. He signed up for war.
But then he gets captured by the Germans.
Yep, which that.
Speaking of the small town meeting, and it's a little interesting when they're all, oh, this isn't American, how dare they? And it's Mr. Kruger saying it.
Mr. Kruger, which, to be fair, in the book they pointed out when...
Aren't you of German descent?
Yep.
We don't even like sauerkraut.
Yeah, it's like a really weird, I have friends that are, it's like weird.
It's interesting because the group, in terms of yes, they were at war with Germany, but do Germans look as different from them as someone who's from Japan?
And that's what we talked about.
And it's so interesting because, we're talking about a group who did the exact same thing to their, to Jewish people. Actually, incredibly worse because you're talking about mass execution.
It's worse, but it doesn't take away from the badness of lesser evils.
Exactly, and it's just interesting because I think the reason why they didn't equate it in the same level is only because it's about... if you're a German walking down the street in America, you could fit in a lot easier.
Also,
physically.
It's not even just looks, which that is a big thing in this book, because they bring up the propaganda posters that talk about the slant teeth, the buck teeth, the slant eyes, the mustache.
I know Rennie was actually shocked when she saw them coming to the camp, and that all of them were.
Well, because her first. Sorry, my bad.
No, you're fine.
I'm so sorry. Her first reaction to this is, oh, they just look like kids. Like when they're first getting off the train, it's like, to her, she was like, they look a little different, but they just look like people. Or
and by the time they come in to help with the farm, the mom is all of a sudden she goes from to
more
come in here.
So that's the thing I want to talk about specifically with the groups of characters is the father is as far as I can tell, being fatherless myself, he's a very good father figure where he's maybe not the most affectionate, but he knows what to say, he knows when to say it, he knows when to not say something. He's very much a man of action and words. But you put those together and they work fine. He sticks by his word no matter what. He gets a lot of guff from the town for eventually having to hire the interned Japanese Americans because he needs help on his beet farm because his son's gone and a lot of the people that would normally help him were drafted. He kind of has I don't know if it's a racist joke that he makes about it, about the people he usually gets working for him. He said they work half the speed and make up for it for charging you twice as much. It's, though, as far as characters go, a lot of characters have their prejudices. Him, his wife, and his whole family are generally very middle of the ground. They're very much, we're gonna wait and see what happens. As you said, someone said, the wife was very kind of on the fence, not sure until she saw these very skinny, young Japanese American boys, and she was like, no, it's in Colorado, but they act really more southern than anything, which maybe it's not a southern thing, maybe it's just a farming thing, where she brought them in, fed them, and then they were like, where should we put our cold lunches? And she's like, no, I'm making you hot food for lunch. Buddy doesn't seem to have a lot of opinions on it, mostly because by the time he gets back, he was just in boot camp. So
Right.
He
He did show the indoctrination. Him and Loyal do actually disagree on things, but
they disagree in very interesting, tense
yes,
ways.
And it does feel very interesting that they don't really explore it much, but it also seems like Loyal's not really wanting to estrange himself with his son when he's about to be shipped off to war.
The thing about Loyal too is that he's not someone who, he's not focused on what everybody else is focused on. Everybody else is focused on, prejudice, hysteria, the things that come along with war. He is basically focused on keeping his farm going, and he's not concerned about what other people say.
He's in his business.
And what the sometimes the issue that comes up is that his wife is much more, so she's a really nice woman. She really cares about everybody, but she's much more conscientious of what other people think of them. Whereas Loyal doesn't care what anybody thinks about them, and so that's where she's concerned, because she's like, well, what are they gonna, we're gonna receive retaliation and this, that, and the other. But the minute that the boys arrive, like you said, she's just like, of course, you're like the same age as my son. Like, I'm gonna take care of you. Like, you're good boys. Like,
and it gets really obvious when she's doting on her new helper to help out around the house, because her heart is giving her trouble, so she doesn't have as much strength as she did. And so she hires
asbestos in the walls.
So she hires Daisy. Yeah, and that was another thing that caught me. Real quick interlude: the fact that, again, 1940s, farmhouse built so that there's snow coming through at night, so they're covered in snow.
Right. It's like
modern day. I mean,
but they
maybe
have an ice box, and they
have electric. I mean, maybe if you read it from Bob the Fast-Talking Dolphin or something. But anyway. So the fact that she's doting on Daisy, she's doting on the boys, and all of a sudden they...
Which the boys, I can remember Daisy.
Carl is the one that...
Harry.
Harry. Was Harry the one? Yeah, Harry.
Harry is the one that had... Harry...
training.
Yes, Harry, one of the Japanese Americans, decides to sign up to fight because,
He wants to prove he's just as American, if not more, than everyone else.
And what's better for proving you're an American than dying for it?
Hey, a lot of countries will actually grant you citizenship if you are willing to sweat and bleed for their country.
Not this one.
The ironic thing, though, too.
Not this one in this time, apparently.
That most of the generation that probably was Daisy and Carl.
Training accident.
Ironically, most of them didn't even necessarily speak Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that was one of the other things.
That was the other thing. Is like I remember the townsfolk were like, oh, they're probably sending information over to Japan, and
they're knitting secret code into them.
Yeah, they're doing secret, and I'm like, yeah, but most of them, I mean, not most of them, but at least the younger generation, they didn't even necessarily speak or read Japanese.
One of the middle-aged men was like, I was born in California, I don't speak it.
Yeah,
because
of course they
say something and his head whips around like immediately because he understands English. Go figure.
There's a scene like that in Band of Brothers. It's very similar with the POW. But yeah, and you see it when there's one of the knitters. What's the name of their club? The Jolly Stitchers. Jolly Stitchers. They, after the mother's been doting on these workers and Daisy, and then the Jolly Stitchers come by and they bring pudding, and then she's like, "Are you honest, girl?" And then she's acting like Daisy can't understand her.
Well, that was the other thing, is also they brought it, and it's like, this is for her, not you. Like, that was one of the other, like who just talks to someone like that?
On the actual Ales and Tales Club, a couple of books I've done now, actually one I did a couple of years ago called A Single Thread by Tracy Chevalier, some of them focus on quilting and sewing, and that one was in the context of a cathedral, but in this case it was in the context of out in this rural farm community, that this was for the mother. A major part of her life was getting together with these women, mostly from church, and quilting together, sewing, all those things. And it's a real both, I think, emotional and cultural context. I kept thinking, this is such a big thing, but it seems like all they do is quilt, but then you realize it's part of how they connect with each other, how they provide. For example, the mother ends up making all of Daisy's baby's clothing, and because I think there's a lot of detail that Sandra Dallas spent on talking about what they were making together or what they were doing, and it's how a lot of these women, the only time that they were able to even talk freely was when they got together, because the farmer men didn't care.
Well, to be fair, most of their husbands are terrible people.
Well,
and I was gonna say she shows
tell us
that.
how you really feel.
She shows that really well because the one who isn't able to keep showing up is the Snows. And she's not able to come all the time because all of a sudden he has his little kick in the head accident, Mr. Snow, who runs the hardware store.
And his daughter, Betty Joyce.
Yes, Betty Joyce.
Betty Joyce Snow.
Morphine addict.
Well, you find that out, but yeah, he's
eventually,
he's already mean. He gets kicked in the head, so they take him, and then he let's just give this raging alcoholic angry man a shot of morphine. That'll do him some good.
And it's not subtle that he's not kind to his wife and child.
You know, I mean, he's even like on an iron bed in the middle of his hardware store and still managing to get up to beat them.
I know, there was actually one of our club members actually was like, why didn't they just shut the door and just ignore him?
Yeah, they could have.
And I was like,
really
but I had a feeling that even if you shut the door on him, that's the one time he would get out of bed.
He probably, yeah.
Well, the thing is, they're in a hardware store. They just wanted to bonk. Oh! But because accidents seem to happen a lot in this small town.
She's also the one that shows that they're more worried about the social aspect. She's more worried about being seen as someone who left her husband than actually doing anything, which is...
I understand at the time, but you know, as now reading, it's like,
yeah.
You hate it when someone in a small town is a terrible person because that means at least 15 people are putting up with it and not saying anything. I'm trying to remember the sheriff. Mr.
Hen. His first name is Hen. His last name is Watrous.
Watrous. I always said Waitrose.
I just know.
There were a lot of names like that in this book. You can say them many
Waterous. That sounds like a Pokemon.
He was an interesting sheriff because I think he was really more of like how Loyal was, where he didn't want to just jump on people just because of social.
They
seemed like good friends, good, or at least good enough friends that whenever the sheriff had an issue, he would go to Loyal first, like, hey, I need to talk.
He was another one who wanted. He wasn't just like, oh, I want to let them blame a Japanese American. No, he really wanted to get down to the truth of what actually happened.
He sat on the name for a year, was it?
Yeah, for
because
about a
he
year.
had no actual evidence.
But he had a good figuring out.
Yeah.
He was a good cop. He was what all cops should aspire to be. Man, this episode's getting real hot. I'm sorry. I know we talked about this.
We're only on medium right now. I don't know what you're talking about.
Just
we need to get it up to 800 degrees.
Fahrenheit. No.
Well, also, I think that was one thing that a lot of us were a little confused by too, was how the.
Do I look like a cat to you?
Do I look like a cat to you, boy? Am I jumping around all nimbly-bimly from tree to tree?
No.
Am I drinking milk from a saucer? No. Well, do you see me eating mice?
Am I drinking coffee from a saucer?
That's
yes.
right. They offered him
a
a bowl of coffee.
Well, that and how like the wife or the mother of Rennie the whole time spends. Oh my god, you guys are so weird.
You married me.
Bartender.
We don't talk about that.
Bartender, need a double.
The one interesting thing that I felt like was kind of not explored was the fact that the mother of the whole story was against lying about anything. She was so like, had to be honest. It was like a really like, that's just the way she was. She was a church-going woman. She did not lie about things. And then the first time she lies, or not lies, but she's starting to sort of try and protect Daisy.
A mission of truth, more than.
Daisy was, from the internment camp, Japanese American, and she becomes pregnant, of course, out of wedlock. And so, but she really formed a bond with her, and so she's trying to protect her and worried about what all the women will say about it. But then what happens later on is when she's being attacked by the biological father of the child, and she ends up killing him in the barn. And this incident, the mother then tries to come up with a way to kind of hide it. So she took it on as herself. Told the sheriff, "This is what I did. This is how it happened. It was self-defense. Blah 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 blah." The sheriff, I think, even kind of questioned it in his head, but he was like, "You know what?
I don't think she even went with self-defense. I think she said it was an accident.
That's right. She said he tripped and fell.
Yeah.
And
I think that
ended up on his back.
I think that was the only thing for me. Like I really loved so many things about the book. I love the dynamics between family. I love like really exploring this time in history. I think the only thing for me was that kind of ending, like the way it happened.
It felt a little too weird.
A little bit.
It wasn't rushed necessarily, but it was such a weird way.
It was just very, kind of a quick ending.
Also, it wasn't a good lie.
Now, I understand why if she had gone self-defense...
Though she never lies, she's bad at it, so...
Yeah.
If she had claimed self-defense, even if she was saying, oh, he was going after Rennie, oh, he was going after me, oh, he was going after, my worker.
The hired help.
Right. Then there probably would have gone to court, which seems to be what they were trying to avoid. But at the same time,
Which also, that's the thing. So, to give some context to a lot of this is... the baby we're talking about is the woman she hires, Daisy, claims at one point she has a fall, so she's out of work for a while, then she eventually comes back.
And her compact, which was a gift from Rennie, is broken.
Yep, what ends up happening is this character, Danny Spano? Danny Spano. Yep. Danny Spano raped her, hard R, and they were trying to keep it down, but the sheriff seems to kind of know a lot of stuff that happens, but no evidence. Eventually, he accosts Daisy after she has the baby in the barn.
Going to raise him a Spano.
Yeah, ugh, gross. Can't think of anything worse. What they say is Daisy stabbed him. Daisy stabbed him right in the chest. But the lie they try to tell is that when he tries to get her, that he falls, hurts himself on a beet cutter knife. Which, if you look those up, they're pretty wicked. They'll cut more than beets. But the reason why they didn't want to say that he was going after her because it was his babies, because then the Spanos could, like you were talking about, sue for
custody and
parentage,
and they could bring civil suits against the farm for
improper something or another.
Right.
Which I understood that. I would figure in that context that the sheriff would protect the family because he knew that they were good people and that they weren't like...
Well, that's after she lies. He goes, so what you're telling me is this, and he makes up a slightly better lie.
But it's interesting because it definitely draws a lot of connections to some other modern books that I've read, like Where the Crawdads Sing and a couple of others that this kind of focused on. There's a tragic event and how people either hide it, cover it up, how they decide to... And it's not, and ironically, in these cases, in both that I'm thinking of, both with that book and this book, they weren't unwarranted in their actions. It's just how you question how the decisions that are made about how to cover it up.
Legality and morality.
Yeah, you're just questioning, like, is this realistic? Is this something? But then you realize, well, in reality, I don't know, people do some pretty crazy things and use some pretty crazy defenses, so... I suppose it's not as unrealistic.
I think it does show, it is also a good show of character development for, a lot of the characters are already pretty developed. Like all the adult characters are pretty developed, they don't change. The children characters are the ones that change the most, and then the only adult character that really changes is the mother through both her health.
Yeah, she does, you're right, it does show her development.
Yeah, because she doesn't lie, so the first real big lie she tells is terrible.
And it is to protect someone who she was originally... worried about having in her home, but she ends up realizing that they are just as much her children as
I think that's an interesting thing with this book. Like with last time, check it out on YouTube, we did Persuasion. All the characters go through some sort of change, and then before that, the characters went through changes. In this book, everything's pretty established. Everyone is what they will always be. Some of them are great, some of them are terrible.
But Rennie is the real, she could have gone either way. She struggled the whole time with being fearful of the camp, because I personally too, it wasn't even just about the prejudice with the Japanese, because she truly wasn't as prejudiced as many of her classmates or anything like that. It was just that this concept of this new camp being right next door at night, the darkness, people that she doesn't know.
Their farm was the closest
to the closest to it. I personally, I get scared at night about it, but she ends up, again, becoming friends with Daisy, really immersing herself in helping with the farm.
Because she saw Daisy as, she saw her as another sister.
As a sister, because her own sister was, not there. And so she really discovers within herself, wow, why am I so fearful? Is this really about prejudice? Is this really about true fear of the unknown? And so she really and I think a lot of it too is she had, in this context in this book, there were actually some fantastic parents. She had some good parents, which I will say, I don't know how many books you guys have read that have great parental
Well, we read 2.
I will say it's definitely far and few between that you get a set of parents where you think, they're not perfect, they make mistakes, but they truly are trying.
Rennie's parents? Mozart's parents.
Well, like I said, yeah, they definitely make mistakes along the way. There's definitely her dad can be kind of harsh sometimes.
Yeah.
The farmer that he is.
They mentioned that it's the only compliments he gives are backhanded ones, but I really only caught 2, and then the rest were just sort of not full.
But
they weren't backhanded, but they weren't full compliments.
But what I like about them is they really let Rennie explore who she is, and they don't try and tell her this is what you need to think.
They ask her constantly, what do you think about this?
They actually involve
Rennie
her.
is the mouthpiece of the author. This one was not responded to by the author, so I get that one.
Okay, but everything else, though, actually was responded with, how the town wasn't necessarily meant to be a cross-section of the entirety of America.
Yeah.
No, but sometimes that happens in a book, especially when you're talking about okay, there's this side who is scared of them, this side who's not, this side who agrees with it. It kind of ends up cross-secting itself almost.
I thought I was onto something when I was like, hey, look, they're cheering for a team called the Chiefs, and it really was not that far ago that the U.S. kicked out the natives and then put them in reservations, and here they are cheering for the Chiefs while they're about to play against a team called the Buffaloes for the internment camps high school team, but she said, no, don't worry about that.
That's actually something I wanted to talk about as far as time frame goes.
The Civil War was... No, I'm agreeing with you.
The grandmother was alive during the Civil War. The Civil War was 75 years before World War II.
What was 75 years before from today?
3 years. You know it was 3 years after World War II?
All right, now we're going to go back.
War.
Okay, my history professors are going to be real mad at me now.
I think the 3 might be off. I looked it up at one point. But that's the thing I talked about. It's just because the grandmother has dementia. So she brings up, it's about time they freed the slaves. And I was like, that's an interesting comment for someone to make. And I looked it up and I'm like, oh yeah, the Civil War was 75 years ago in the timeline of this book. It was 75 years before 1942.
Yeah, that's crazy to think how really not far that is.
And think about what happened between those, after World War II, after the Korean War, after the Vietnam War. We just don't stop. We can't sit still.
We literally keep repeating the exact same thing over and over and over and over.
There's always a them. There's always an us.
What happened after 9/11? Anybody who's Middle Eastern, they're terrorists.
Well, that's exactly why.
Someone's calling me.
That's fine. That's what she claimed was because of Gitmo.
Like I said, after 9/11, who did everybody think was trying to kill everybody in America?
I still remember being in middle school, and there was someone I knew who was Iranian, not Iraqi, not Afghani, and people would joke and call him terrorist. Iranian.
Because fun fact, children are also terrible, and children with terrible parents continue to be terrible.
Rennie gets bullied for her family hiring people.
Yep. Also, fun fact, she gets a lot of her personality from her father. Her father, at the beginning, she talks about, he doesn't do it anymore, but he used to fight a lot.
Oh yeah, she's definitely a fighter. Whenever people say bad things about her family, her instinct is
she's
to fight.
ready to throw down with anybody.
Which I find, I admire. I'm not advocating physical altercation in this situation. She was attacked at different points, and the one teacher tells her, it's not worth it.
But she also, I'm glad that teacher does it. She tells her to don't worry about it, but not fully don't ignore them. It's just hey, ignore them, but know that you're right, your father's right, I think you're, it's in a way that's don't just ignore them, but giving reformation that they're adults, those kids are bad, they are not learning good things.
I actually really like that teacher. You find out a lot later that she's actually married to a Japanese man. She moved along with them that she could...
Sorry, we keep doing this.
I know.
I keep doing this.
I do too.
This, like I said with this book, the characters that are so good, that are good in this book, not even just morally, they're just written well, but also morally, they're such good characters. They're such good characters to read about. They're such good characters that you're hanging on everything they say.
And that was the thing I felt about this book, is that even if there are a couple times where you might question it, the realisticness of certain elements of plot or whatever, it was a really easy read because you feel connected to this family, you feel connected to what's going on in their life, and it's just a really, I hate to say easy read because reading, it's not about being easy, but it really flows incredibly well, and I think that Sandra Dallas had a real connection to what she was talking about.
I read over half it in one night.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was me too.
It goes
Like,
quickly. I read it, I think, in 2 days.
you can see about here. This is where I got. This is about how far I got in one day.
Yeah, it's
because
a really,
I just couldn't put it down.
And that's what I'm looking for. Like, I'm not looking for perfection. I know that the fun thing about these talks is, nice try.
Yikes!
The fun thing about these talks with all these books for Ales and Tales is that there's always going to be something that we can argue about or say we didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
But when you can come out of a book saying, that was like, that was a good read.
Yep.
Like
what Gene said last time is, if the book's not memorable, then it's worse than it being bad.
If you come out of it and you hate it, it stirred an emotion.
Yeah, and this one is one where even with a couple of things that I'm like, that was a really good read, and I definitely plan on hopefully reading more of her books in the future because she's got some good others on her list.
And as a reminder, this is Tallgrass by Sandra Dallas. If you have any interest in the subject, pick it up at your local library, or if you're in town, the Palm Harbor Library.
Tuning in to the September episode of PowerLines. As always, I'm Cheddar Allen Poe.
I'm Stone Cold Jane Austen.
If you're interested in joining any of our contests, please contact any of the library socials.
And I hope we all learned something today. And please, we'd love to hear from you.
Flame us, love us, whatever you got.
Criticism is always great, even when it hurts.
Especially when it hurts. So join us next time. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and also follow the library on
Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube.